the Indian workforce has a significant number of casual workers, and that, in and of itself, has a tremendous number of implications for the Indian economy. As mentioned in the first video in Chapter 10, casual workers are those whom do not have access to benefit programs provided by employers, and as a result, have no healthcare coverage or pension benefits linked to their employment. As you can imagine, this puts these workers in a pretty precarious position. Moreover, casual workers currently make up 30% of the Indian employment market, which is a very worrying statistic. A slight economic downturn or a healthcare epidemic could lead to disastrous conditions for the entire Indian economy. The next topic in this section, named Informalization, attempts to explain the differences of Indian employment conditions across workers. Basically, those who are employed can be broken down into two groups: formal workers and informal workers. Simply said, formal workers are those who work in legitimate operations and as a result are entitled to protections under the law and benefits, whereas those who work in informal circumstances have no protections afforded to them whatsoever. The textbook goes into great detail to point out that the current woes faced by workers, namely that 90% of them are involved in informal employment opportunities, are directly a result of opening up markets during the reforms of 1991. You should realize that this point of view is highly opinionated and many arguments could be made to contradict these claims. One thing that you might want to consider is that if free market conditions did in fact lead to these conditions, then why don't other developed nations around the world suffer from these same consequences? Moving on, we return to the discussion of unemployment and are presented with this illustration here. This represents the different types of unemployment faced by rural and urban areas. Firstly, let's take a look at rural regions. They face disguised and seasonal unemployment. Disguised unemployment simply refers to the fact that too many people are working in inefficient endeavors. For example, imagine that 30 people are working on a farm, but actually we only need 10 workers to complete the work. In that case, 20 people should be considered disguised unemployment. The second case, which is self-explanatory, seasonal unemployment, refers to the fact that during some seasons, there is absolutely nothing to harvest. On the flip side, urban regions face industrial and educated unemployment. Industrial unemployment refers to the surplus of illiterate or uneducated workers who supply their labor to the mining, transport, trade, and construction industry. Most of this is directly attributable to the influx of rural residents to urban centers. On the other hand, educated unemployment refers to skilled people being unable to gain employment. This is happening for three distinct reasons. Firstly, schools are expanding at a rapid rate with little oversight. Secondly, the education sector is not focused on helping to prepare students for the workplace. And finally, job opportunities have not kept up with increases in the size of the labor force. The next section in the textbook mentions the 5 types of unemployment that are faced by Indians regardless of whether they live in an urban or rural area. They are open unemployment, structural unemployment, underemployment, frictional unemployment, and cyclical employment. Open unemployment refers to individuals who are skilled but simply unable to find work and hence depend on other earners in their family. Structural unemployment refers to unemployment that occurs as a result of either changes in technology or changes in consumer demand. Essentially, this is because labor in those areas is no longer necessary. Underemployment refers to the state when an individual is working, but not as much as he or she would like to be working. Frictional unemployment refers to unemployment that occurs when an individual wishes to change careers because it usually takes time to find a new employment opportunity. Cyclical unemployment refers to employment that occurs as a direct result of fluctuations in the marketplace. What is most important to know about this section is that these 5 types of unemployment circumstances occur regardless of whether you are employed in an urban or rural setting. Now that we know about the different types of unemployment, what about the reasons why unemployment exists in the first place? For that, we can look to the following 8 reasons. Slow economic growth, rapid growth of population, agriculture as a seasonal occupation, the lack of irrigation, joint family system, the decay of the cottage and small industry, low savings and investment, and mobility of labor issues. The first 4 reasons here are self-explanatory, but the joint family system needs a brief discussion. This system encourages disguised unemployment, especially in rural areas. The decay of the cottage industry is merely as a result of development and industrialization. Low savings and investment is directly a result of Indians having limited disposable income. And mobility of labor, or rather, lack thereof, refers to the inability of Indians to easily relocate to areas that have employment opportunities. Now that we know the reasons why unemployment exists, it's worthwhile looking at what the consequences of unemployment in India are. There are 2 major consequences, economic and social. The economic consequences are very straightforward. Due to a lack of utilizing all of the labor resources, India faces some immediate economic consequences, all of which can be directly related to not maximizing GDP. Socially, since people don't have access to jobs, they will not have access to money, which necessarily leads to a lower quality of life, a greater level of inequality between the rich and the poor, and society will have to deal with social unrest and income inequality. As a result of this, it is important for India to resolve these problems, and the last section in this chapter looks at the 8 possible solutions to this problem. They are as follows: increased production, increased productivity, high rate of capital formation, assisting self-employed persons, educational reforms, technique of production, cooperative industries, and employment programs. The majority of these are easier said than done, especially the first 2. If we think about increasing productivity, that will likely lead to more unemployment, as those who are employed but doing nothing, as is the case with disguised unemployment, will likely lose their jobs. Increasing the rate of capital formation means investment opportunities need to become available, which potentially could be directly linked to the next point, which is assisting self-employed individuals achieve success through entrepreneurial ventures. Educational reforms are obviously needed, and a video on that topic could take hours to complete. While improvements in technology, increasing the number of cooperatives, which was described earlier in the textbook, and employment opportunity programs are very self-explanatory. So, what have we learned at the end of this chapter? Basically, we have learned how to calculate the participation rate, the unemployment rate. We are now able to discern their differences and the implications of the rates themselves. Moreover, we have also come to understand that unemployment-related issues vary by gender, location, and exist for a variety of reasons, none of which seem to be immediately resolvable in India.